Today's story is called The Lame Dad Chronicles, The Mystery of the Secret School Gold.
It was a Thursday evening, and the Turner family was heading to Jake and Ellie's school for what promised to be a routine parent-teacher night. At least, that's what Ellie and Jake had hoped for. "Please, Dad," Ellie said as she adjusted her backpack. "Just act normal this time." "Normal?" Dad asked, feigning shock as he opened the car door. "Who wants boring old normal when you've got spectacular?" Jake groaned. "We're begging you, no jokes, no costumes, no anything that makes people stare at us." Dad adjusted his tie, which had a cartoon raccoon pattern, and gave them a mock salute. Scout's honor, no stunts tonight, just plain, boring, completely normal Dad. Ellie and Jake exchanged a wary glance. They both knew what normal Dad usually meant. Total chaos. Phase 1. The welcome table debacle. When they arrived at the school, the hallways were already bustling with students, parents, and teachers. At the entrance, a cheery PTA volunteer handed out name tags. "Here you go, Mr. Turner," she said, handing Dad a plain white sticker. Dad frowned. "Plain? This won't do at all." He pulled a Sharpie from his pocket and began writing. When he turned it around, his tag read, "Detective Dad, Problem Solver Extraordinaire." "Seriously?" Ellie muttered. Dad stuck it proudly to his chest. "What? It's a conversation starter." Jake pointed to Rocky, who was perched on Dad's shoulder wearing a miniature detective hat. "And what about him? You're not seriously bringing the raccoon inside, are you?" "Rocky's my assistant," Dad said matter-of-factly. "He's here to observe and take notes." The PTA volunteer blinked. "Is that a raccoon?" "Yes," Dad replied, handing her a chocolate coin. "And he's very well behaved. Consider this your first clue." Jake buried his face in his hands. "We're never going to live this down." Phase 2. The classroom visits. The first stop was Jake's science classroom, where projects from the recent science fair were displayed on tables. "Look, Jake!" Dad exclaimed, pointing to a model volcano. "This one actually erupts. Let's test it out." "Dad, no!" Jake hissed, but it was too late. Dad leaned over the project, accidentally bumping the switch. The volcano bubbled over, spewing red foam onto the table. "Whoops," Dad said, grabbing paper towels. "Science in action, am I right?" Jake stared at him, mortified, as Rocky attempted to sniff the foam. "Don't worry," Dad whispered. "We'll just say Rocky was doing research." "Dad!" Jake groaned. Next was Ellie's classroom, where her art projects were on display. "Wow," Dad said loudly, picking up a sculpture. "Ellie, did you make this?" "No," Ellie muttered, tugging on his arm. "Put it down." "Why not?" Dad asked, spinning the sculpture like a lazy Susan. "It's a masterpiece." "That's not mine," Ellie hissed. "Oh," Dad said, setting it down carefully. "Well, it's still nice, but I'm sure yours is better." Ellie slumped into a chair, shaking her head. "This is so embarrassing." Rocky, meanwhile, had climbed onto a nearby desk and was pawing through a box of crayons. The teacher walked by, raising an eyebrow. "Is that a raccoon?" "Assistant raccoon," Dad corrected. "He's very passionate about the arts." Phase 3. The auditorium incident. The night culminated in the auditorium, where the principal gave a speech about the importance of community and involvement. Dad, sitting in the front row, whispered to Ellie and Jake. "Watch this. I'm going to ask a question that'll blow everyone's minds." "No, you're not," Ellie said, glaring at him. But Dad raised his hand anyway, his fedora slightly askew and his raccoon assistant Rocky still perched on his shoulder. "Yes, Mr. Turner?" the principal asked, her tone slightly weary after several of Dad's earlier comments. Dad stood dramatically, pointing his finger in the air. "Can you confirm if the rumors about a hidden treasure under the school are true?" The room fell silent. Ellie and Jake froze, sinking into their seats. "Oh no," Ellie muttered. The principal chuckled nervously. "That's quite an interesting question, Mr. Turner. But of course, there's no treasure under the school. That's just a silly rumor." Dad squinted at her. "You hesitated." "I didn't hesitate," the principal replied, adjusting her glasses. "Yes, you did," Dad said, leaning forward. "Classic treasure guardian behavior." Rocky chirped in agreement, his little paw pointing toward the stage. Jake covered his face. "Dad, stop, please." But then something unexpected happened. A muffled voice came from the back of the room.
It's true.
Heads turned as Mr. Peters, the elderly janitor, stood up. His face was pale, and he clutched his mop like a shield. The principal's eyes widened. "Mr. Peters, sit down!" But Mr. Peters shook his head. "I can't keep it in any longer. The rumors are true. There is treasure under the school. I've seen it myself." Phase 4. The treasure hunt begins. Before anyone could stop him, Dad leaped onto the stage, dragging Rocky with him. "Where is it, Peters?" Dad demanded, holding out his magnifying glass like a badge. "Speak now!" It's under the boiler room," the janitor confessed. It's been there since the school was built in the 1930s. They said it was just an old legend, but one night I heard a hollow sound while mopping." The principal grabbed the microphone, her voice shaky. That's enough, Mr. Peters. This is a parent-teacher night, not a treasure hunt." Dad turned to the audience. "People of the Turner School community, will we let the truth remain buried?"
No!
Someone shouted from the back. Jake buried his head in his hands. "What is happening right now?" Ellie shook her head, whispering, "Dad's creating a mob. That's what's happening." Phase 5. Into the boiler room. With surprising speed, Dad convinced the crowd to follow him to the basement. The principal tried to block the way, but the momentum was unstoppable. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "You can't just barge into the boiler room." But Dad was already leading the charge, flashlight in hand. Rocky chittered enthusiastically, pointing the way. Ellie and Jake reluctantly trailed behind, whispering to each other. "This is insane," Ellie said. "Yeah," Jake replied, "but also, what if there's treasure?" The boiler room was dark and filled with the hum of machinery. Dad knelt on the floor, tapping the tiles dramatically. "There!" Rocky squeaked, scratching at a section of the wall. Dad grinned. "Good work, partner." With a dramatic tug, he pulled a panel loose, revealing a trap door. The crowd gasped. "No way," Ellie whispered. Jake's jaw dropped. Dad was right? The principal rushed forward. "Mr. Turner, I demand you stop this nonsense immediately." Dad ignored her, flipping open the trap door. A ladder descended into the darkness below. "All right, team," Dad said, adjusting his fedora. "Let's see what's down there." Phase 6. The big discovery. Dad, Rocky, and the braver parents climbed down the ladder, flashlights sweeping the space. They landed in a dusty, dimly lit chamber. "Whoa," Jake whispered, peering over the edge. The room was filled with old wooden crates, coins spilling from their cracks. A large chest sat in the center, gleaming faintly in the flashlight's glow. Dad opened the chest with a theatrical flourish, revealing piles of gold coins, jewels, and old documents. "It's real!" Dad shouted, lifting a sparkling ruby. The crowd erupted into cheers. Ellie and Jake stared in disbelief. "He actually found treasure," Ellie said, shaking her head. "Yeah," Jake said. "Dad's lame, but he's kind of awesome." Phase 7. The aftermath. Back upstairs, the principal tried to regain control, but the story spread like wildfire. News crews arrived the next morning, and the Turner family was hailed as local heroes. As they left the school that night, Ellie and Jake couldn't stop smiling. "I can't believe it," Ellie said. "You were actually right, Dad." Dad grinned, tossing Rocky a chocolate coin. "Another case solved by Detective Dad and his trusty sidekick." Jake laughed. "You're still lame, though." "Lame and legendary," Dad replied, pulling them into a hug. And as they walked home under the stars, the Turner family couldn't deny that this was one parent-teacher night that they would never forget.